Welcome to the Africa Tech Kin, your weekly guide to what's new, what's hot, what's happening in the world of technology here in Zimbabwe. I'm your host, DannythatGuy, and I'm your guide through the complicated world of technology, not only in Zimbabwe, but regionally and in the world. We've got a packed show for you today. We're going to be crunching the numbers, first of all. The Postal and Telecommunications Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe, or POTRAZ, have released the abridged sector performance report for first quarter of 2025. In other words, how did the telecommunications sector perform in Zimbabwe in the first quarter of 2025? Well, we received that this past week, and we're going to take a look at that comprehensive look in the nation's evolving telecommunications sector. We're also going to look at the shocking impact of Starlink and how that is affecting some of the other players. And not only that, but Starlink seems to have changed its prices. We'll be unpacking that in just a little bit. And then finally, the big question. If you have a YouTube channel or a podcast, perhaps on Facebook or wherever it is that you are spreading your podcast, are you considered a broadcaster in the eyes of Zimbabwean law? Well, the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe seems to think so. They put out a notice this week, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what that notice means and the implications for anyone who puts out online content. So that will be some interesting things to take a look at. A lot of things for us to discuss and a lot of things for us to be able to unpack. If you want to be part of the show, if you want to share your opinions as we go along, the number is 0772-168-045, and you can reach us right here in studio via the WhatsApp number 0772-168-045. Make sure to let me know who you are and where you're listening from as well. Shall we jump straight into it? Let's take a look at the numbers, because the numbers don't lie, shall we? First of all, we'll be talking about the POTRAZ Q1 2025 report, the abridged sector report for the telecommunications industry. Basically, it's just how well did telecommunications do in Zimbabwe in the first quarter of 2025. Well, the report was a goldmine. The full 24 pages of it, I was able to go through it and come up with some of the different takeaways that we could talk about. First of all, our appetite for data as a country for the internet is exploding. Mobile data consumption is up 17% from the last quarter. In terms of actual numbers, we have apparently used over 114 petabytes of data in the first quarter of 2025. How much is a petabyte? 1 million gigabytes. So 114 petabytes of data in that quarter of 2025. A mind-boggling number. It's very difficult to try and understand exactly how much data is that. Well, the report shows that internet and data is now officially the biggest moneymaker for mobile networks. So in this quarter of 2025, over 50% of revenue made by the major network operators and by the different mobile networks was data. So we could officially say that data has overtaken phone calls. In fact, is this the first step in the idea that the era of the phone call is officially over? Perhaps. Just over 50% of all revenue made for the major network operators was data. Interesting statistic that was coming through there. In terms of actually looking at the numbers directly in them, active mobile subscriptions grew by 1.38%. We now have 15.89 million mobile subscriptions in the country, but the mobile penetration rate declined slightly to 101.39%, and that was because of the growth of the population. So we are at slightly over 101% because many people have more than one phone. So it's been very interesting to see how the internet and data and mobile phones have been moving. We'll be also paying a bit more attention to this report as we go forth, and if we see any more patterns and interesting information in there, then we'll definitely bring that with you. But I thought that was an interesting one, the revenue shift between internet data and mobile phone calls, how it has shifted to internet and data rather than phone calls. It's now over 50%. Very interesting. By the way, voice is sitting at 32.2%, or rather 32.28% of all revenue made by the mobile network operators. Something also very interesting that came up was the stark reality of Telecel. According to this first quarter report, Telecel lost 11.69% of its subscribers in that quarter. Its voice traffic also plummeted by 43.28%, and its data traffic also declined by 18.26%. So the market share for Telecel right now is sitting at 2.12%. That's almost nothing. 0.20% for data traffic. Are we now left with a two-horse race? Does it seem like we only have two players in the market at the moment, namely Econet and Net1? Does this mark the end for Telecel? The numbers are looking a little bit dire. We'll be paying attention to that as we go along as well. And that was also another interesting thing that I think came out of that POTRAZ report. Here's the headline stat for me, though, that comes through from the POTRAZ report. Hear this. Used international internet capacity. That's how they measure the pipe that connects Zimbabwe to the rest of the world. So used international internet capacity grew by over 200%. And the report directly credits this to Starlink, which apparently accounts for a staggering 83% of that usage. That's an insane statistic. Basically, what we're saying here is that Starlink is making up 83% of total internet usage here in Zimbabwe. When I saw that, I thought I must have made a mistake. I thought I read wrong in the report. But I'm going to read the exact words from the report itself. It says here, the massive growth in used incoming international internet bandwidth capacity may be attributed to Starlink, as it commanded 83% of the usage in the quarter under review. That's an insane figure. That means that every other source of internet, we're talking fiber, fixed LTE, DSL, WiMAX, everything else, altogether only makes 17% of total international internet traffic in Zimbabwe. Or rather, international internet capacity. That's an insane statistic. And I think it really highlights just how big of an impact Starlink has had on internet usage here in Zimbabwe. We'll be paying a bit more attention as to exactly what this means. And I think in the coming weeks, hopefully we'll be able to get some representatives of POTRAZ to be able to break down this statistic for us and help us understand just how is it that Starlink is using that much capacity of internet here in Zimbabwe. It's truly a mind-boggling figure, in my opinion. Speaking of Starlink, let's take this opportunity to talk a little bit about Starlink's price difference, or the growth in prices of Starlink. This POTRAZ report really shows us that Starlink is making waves in Zimbabwe. So much internet is going through Starlink. But it seems that the average Zimbabwean might not be able to afford Starlink, starting the report that came out in this past week. Thanks to TechZim for actually paying attention to these changes in pricing. If you go to the official Starlink website, it seems that the monthly subscription fee has been changed slightly, obviously upwards. But the big news is the removal of the installment or payment plan option that was available for Starlink hardware kits. So typically what would happen is if you subscribe to get yourself Starlink, you'd be able to pay the hardware prices over a period of several months while you were also paying for your data usage. Well, now it seems that Starlink has moved to a more exclusive, premium-only position in the market, which is you first have to buy the hardware kit outright. And in some cases, it's in excess of $400 before you can start paying the monthly subscription fee. So we're going to see how this is going to affect the usage of Starlink, and we're going to see if this is going to make things better or worse. Because remember, last week we spoke about how Starlink seems to have reached capacity in many places, including Harare and Bulawayo. So perhaps this is a move to sort of curtail that. Well, we'll have to wait and see. So that's the situation there that's happening with Starlink, as well as the general report that we received from POTRAZ. Very interesting, and we will be paying more attention, as I've mentioned, to this report in the coming weeks, and we'll be able to unpack some of the different information that we glean from this particular report. Before we continue, we're going to take a brief break. My name's DannythatGuy. This is the Africa Tech Kin. We hope that you are tuned in every week, straight after the news at 7 p.m. Also, you can be part of the show. The WhatsApp number is 0772-168-045. You can also continue to watch this show on YouTube or subscribe to it via our podcasts. Use whatever app you use to access podcasts and search for ZiFM Stereo, and you'll find this show uploaded shortly after each week's episode that airs on Tuesday evening. For now, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. My name's DannythatGuy. Welcome back to the Africa Tech Kin. I'm your host, DannythatGuy. This show comes to you every week on a Tuesday, straight after the news at 7 p.m. Make sure you make a date with us if you're going to listen to it live. Or if you're only catching it now and you want to catch up on the rest of the show, we had a very interesting discussion about the POTRAZ Q1 telecommunications industry report that tells us a little bit about how things have been going. Some dire news for Telecel, but some great news for Starlink, apparently, as well as the changes in Starlink prices. If you want to find out more about that, please subscribe to ZiFM Stereo podcasts, and you'll find that this particular show is available on the podcast, or go to our ZiFM Stereo YouTube page where you'll be able to watch this show. Yep. You'll be able to watch it, including my face, whether fortunate or unfortunate for you. For now, we're going to continue with the show. Something that we hinted at earlier on. The Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe sent a shockwave through the country's content creator community this week. What happened? Well, through their official channels, both on Twitter, I refuse to call it X, and some of their other platforms, they put out a notice that warned YouTubers, Facebook podcasters, and other online content creators that they may be subject to the same rules as traditional broadcasters. Interesting, you might be thinking. Well, let me quote some of the things that were said in this particular notice. BAZ in this notice expressed serious concern over the growing prevalence of internet-based broadcasting of content that is inconsistent with Zimbabwe's broadcasting regulations and standards. Very interesting wording that was used there, internet-based broadcasting. In fact, I'll read some more things directly from this particular notice that went out. They spoke about incidents involving unverified, harmful, or offensive material represent a blatant disregard for the guidelines provided in the nation's broadcasting laws. And it goes on to list the laws that it's referencing. That's the Broadcasting Services Act, the Broadcasting Services Regulations for Licensing and Content, as well as the Broadcasting Services Regulations for the Codes of Conduct for Broadcasters. It then goes on to mention, and listen to the strong wording here, the authority will continue to monitor both traditional and digital media and shall not hesitate to decisively enforce the existing laws to protect the integrity of Zimbabwe's media space. The authority calls on all broadcasters to familiarize themselves with the Code of Conduct for Broadcasters and to ensure that their content complies with the law. Some scary words there. What does this mean? What are the implications? Well, I did reach out to the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe, and they did promise to give us some comments on this particular notice. Unfortunately, they did not come in time for this particular show. But in the subsequent shows, I will be sharing the official position of the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe on this issue. But for now, we can think a little bit about what this might mean for anyone who has a YouTube page, anyone who has a podcast, anyone who even has an Instagram that they go live on. What could this potentially mean? Well, there's some value, I think, in us sort of considering what the context of this particular notice was. Now, this notice came in a week that some online podcasters were being criticized for some of their content. More specifically, they were not mentioned in this notice, but it doesn't stop us from thinking about what the context is. Popular podcast show host Ola7, who has a podcast in which he interviewed someone, and there were some, shall we say, questionable discussions that were happening on that podcast. It seems that this might have been one of the things that was referenced. It was by no means the only podcast. Several others seem to have had certain questionable content on their podcasts. Could this be a reference to them? Well, perhaps. What does this mean for you if you have a YouTube page, or if you have a Facebook page where you regularly post content? I think it's a very valid question for us to understand. At what point does a YouTuber, a Zimbabwean YouTuber, or someone with a Facebook page, or someone with a YouTube channel, Facebook page, Instagram Live, whatever the case is, at what point does that person cease being someone who's just posting things on their content, or rather on their digital platforms, and when do they become a broadcaster in the eyes of the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe? It was not specifically mentioned in the notice, but there was reference made to one of the regulations about licensing. And if you also take a look at the Broadcasting Services Act, it does mention that broadcasters are subject to licensing under BAZ. Does this mean that there's an expectation for podcasters and YouTubers to have a license? What are the financial implications of this? Also, the very dire warning about there being potentially consequences from a legal side of things, there being enforcement of these rules. Does this mean that some podcasters have to take some thought about whether they might be falling afoul of the law? What about a young person who just wants to start a podcast to express their thoughts? Maybe it's a tech podcast or an entertainment podcast or to review music. Would they fall under the regulations that have been specified in the Broadcasting Services Act? Well, we think these are very valid questions. And I think it's a very important thing for all of us to think about and for us to be able to unpack. It seems the rest of the world is moving towards deregulation in the space of online content creation, bar America, of course, but they have their own things going on over there. In general, it seems that most economies want to spur online content creation, make it easier for people to be able to generate revenue through content creation. But it seems Zimbabwe is choosing a different path, a path that adds more regulation and makes it more difficult for content creators to be able to continue to create content. Well, we're going to have to get to the bottom of this and try to find out a little bit more about why some of these regulations have been put in place and what it means for someone who simply has a YouTube page. Is this a reference to them? Well, we'll have to find out, and I will do my best to dig together with the Broadcasting Authority of Zimbabwe for us to be able to have a clear answer on this particular story. Finally, international technology news. There's a story that's been trending all over the world that is really about a huge cautionary tale in the world of corporate governance, and it also has a tech angle to it. You may have come across this. The CEO of the US data tech company Astronomer, his name is Andy Byron, he resigned this week abruptly. And the reason for this resignation is because his video at a Coldplay concert went viral. Long story short, he was at this concert together with someone else from his own company, his company's chief people officer, in other words, their head of HR, and they were cozying up and cuddling together in a way that was pretty clear that it was more than just a professional or work relationship. The kicker, they're both married to other people. This obviously caused a stir. It became a huge viral moment, and hundreds of millions of people worldwide, if not billions, have seen a video of this CEO of this tech company engaging in infidelity with someone from his own organization. To make it worse, head of HR from his own organization. This obviously led to a firestorm. He resigned and is no longer head of that company. And it's led to many conversations about corporate governance. Some people feel, what's wrong with, yes, it's a bad thing to happen, but does that mean he had to resign? Others feel that it's pretty clear that this was a violation of ethics. And it makes us wonder, here in Zimbabwe, are our corporate governance structures in companies as robust to be able to determine what would be ethical and unethical when it comes to the behavior of a CEO? If this happened here in Zimbabwe, if the CEO of a major company was caught with the head of HR of that same company committing, shall we say, acts of infidelity in public, and it went viral, would that company expect that CEO to step down? I'm not so sure. Maybe you have your opinions, or perhaps you have your thoughts of similar situations that may have happened at the company that you work for. Another question that comes up, here in Zimbabwe, is it likely that there is some level of public scrutiny and surveillance at public events? Well, we have seen it happen. Many sporting events, there are photos and videos that will come out and be shared all over social media, many different entertainment events as well. Does that mean we can expect that there will be more surveillance going forward? Unfortunately, yes. If you're going to be in someplace public, you should probably assume that there's going to be a video or a picture of you that is going to be made available to the public. If you're engaging in something that you shouldn't be, there is a likelihood that it might go viral. Just something to remember, and a very interesting situation that happened that does make us think about not only corporate governance here in Zimbabwe, but also in general, public surveillance, and whether there really is a big brother wherever we are in the world. Okay. That's pretty much it. All the time we have for on our show tonight. Thank you very much for tuning in. We took a look at how the massive data boom in Zimbabwe seems to bode well for Starlink, but not so well for Telecel, for example. We also spoke about how the regulatory landscape seems to be changing for online content creators. Whatever the case, it seems that the digital world is changing. For the better or worse, we will be here as the Africa Tech Kin to make sure that we show you what's happening and what it means as we continue paying attention to the world of technology. What are your thoughts? Is BAZ right to regulate podcasters? Is Telecel on its way out? Find us on Twitter and Facebook, ZiFM Stereo. Let us know your thoughts. Send a WhatsApp message, 0772-168-045. Make sure you subscribe to us on whatever podcast app you use. Just search for ZiFM Stereo or on YouTube, where you will find this particular show as well. My name's DannythatGuy. It's been an absolute pleasure continuing to discuss technology with you. We call this show the Africa Tech Kin. That's K-I-N, because we believe we're all a family and technology is what connects us. My name's DannythatGuy. We'll be back again next week, same time, same place, right here on ZiFM Stereo, straight after the news at 7 p.m. Until then, I hope you remain well, and we'll catch you then. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time for Africa Tech Kin on ZiFM Stereo, discussing all things tech.